and welcome to another episode of the Design Therapy, your creative community and outlet for all things inspirational, experimental, and finding that artist within. I'm your host, Cassie Patterson, a creative designer and brand strategist in Nashville, Tennessee. And on this episode, I have a phenomenal artist who has such a diverse background, from graphic design, tattooing, to educating the next generation. Please give him a warm welcome, Art Hullender. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
You actually make me sound cool.
You are. You're badass. Pull up your sleeve. Let's see your sleeve. Everybody has amazing. Look at those sleeves. Yes.
Yeah. So I sat still too long when I was living in Japan, and stuff happened.
It's awesome. You have probably the most badass tattoo sleeve I've ever seen.
Yeah, well, things are progressing now. So I'm for a long time I was always the most tattooed guy in the room, and now there's usually one or two other guys.
There's a couple of more now,
Yeah.
And be like, hey, look at my cool one.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, tell everybody a little bit about who you are and kind of where you started in your creative journey.
Okay. Well, I'm Art Hullender, and technically it's Arthur Hullender, but there's
But a play on words is art on art is the best thing.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my linguistics professors used to that was his favorite joke was this is art, and he went to the Memphis College of Art, and
it's the best. Only people who are named Arthur can get away with that, who are in art school.
Yeah. And it was one of those things okay, so my actual name is Arthur. There's 4 Arthurs in our family. We're all named after my grandfather, and none of us go by Arthur. I grew up. There were 2 Arties. There was Big Artie and Little Artie. I was Little Artie, even though now I'm technically taller than Big Artie, but Big Artie was a Marine. So he's an older cousin of mine, and I actually got to see him for the first time in 2 decades, about 3 years ago at a reunion. And but when I went to art school, all of a sudden nobody, it was just it just happened. Nobody, and it's always weird going back to my hometown or going back to my family, once I started getting a lot of tattoos, my family actually started doing it too, and so it was just I was just art. It was
infectious.
Yeah, which is funny because that's what my grandfather went by. My grandfather was Arthur, and he didn't go by Arthur. He went by Art. And
that's awesome.
So
it's a family legacy.
Yeah. And then technically I'm Dr. Hullender, which is a different story of other poor life choices I've made, and but no, yeah. Again, nobody calls me that either. So.
No, I don't think I've ever called you Dr. Hullender. Dr.
Yeah,
Hullender.
I don't think. Yeah, I don't think we've talked since I finished the PhD. That was 2014.
Yeah.
Because you had already moved back to Nashville. So.
Moved back. That was my first year here, or I moved in 2015.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Wow. I don't know how we missed that. Anyway. All right. So.
So you got your degree in graphic design.
Oh yeah. I went. I did the whole AP art thing in high school, and I did that Rising Star program thing at SCAD, and then I ended up moving to Memphis for Memphis College of Art. That was what originally brought me here. And my undergrad's in graphic art, but I did a bizarre mixture of photography and metalwork. I almost switched majors. I loved the metalwork, and I took just enough foundations in painting to be able to kind of navigate where I'm at right now. But that's kind of jumping ahead. did web design straight out of like I was actually one of like two people who had a job right when I graduated, and it lasted a month. I hated web design so bad,
A
and it
lot of
wasn't that I
graphic
hated,
designers do.
yeah, and it wasn't that I hated the design. Like I actually loved web design. It
Mhm.
was just the person that I was working for, he really wanted a coder,
Yeah,
and didn't really understand the difference between the two.
there's a big
Uh,
difference.
yeah, and I mean, because I could code, I actually taught like this was like this was like '98, so they didn't even have a program teaching that at MCA at
You
that
had to
time. So,
hard code it,
yes,
which is
like
not
I
fun.
actually we didn't have classes. I just locked myself in a computer lab for a weekend and taught myself HTML,
Hmm.
and enough Java to just kind of fudge by, which Java's like gone in and out of use two or three times since then, and
Yeah.
has on like whatever version it's on. So,
Hmm.
um, but I really just kind of bummed around a bit. Like I made good money for a month, and of which I lived off of for the next 6 months. I just kind of budgeted, and I ended up selling my car and being homeless in New York for a bit, and it just several other adventures that are much longer stories.
Yeah.
um, and then I ended up with uh, that was how I ended up back in Memphis after New York, with Glenn was my roommates. But yeah, Glenn and I were roommates, and it was Glenn that I was living with when I kind of stumbled into teaching.
Hmm.
I had not done any art or done anything really creative. I had done a lot of freelance stuff while I was kind of trying to find my way around. I was doing tech support right when I
Hmm.
moved in with Glenn, and then ended up stumbling into teaching. And my first teaching job was probably the only job I've ever gotten just cold call out of a newspaper.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those voices that it was for a computer teacher at a day school, and it was a Jewish day school here in Memphis that ended up being like a phenomenal place to work.
Hmm.
And it was just like listening to that voice, like like every now and then you get the voice in the back of your head, and it's a good voice, and you want to hear it and listen to it. And I actually listened to it, which is actually unusual for me because I'm pretty stubborn most of the time. Um, but while I was teaching there, the the girl I was dating at the time, who actually ended up being my first wife, found this thing called the JET program, and she knew I loved Japan, and like was like, well, why don't we go live there, And I was like, because we were already engaged at that time, and I was just like, okay. It's like, that was not a big twisting of the arm for me. And so I taught 1 year in Memphis, and then I taught another year in uh, Japan on the JET program. I taught at two high schools in Kyoto, and one was a very artsy high school, and I fit in really well there. The other was an agricultural high school up in the mountains that I had to take a bus to 2 days a week.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it was not quite as fun, but everything, like they had, like basically it was like a boarding school, and all the students lived there, and like so everything was grown there,
Hmm.
and they had cows, and they did, it's like, so when you ordered lunch there, it was amazing. Like it was worth everything else you had to put up with almost.
Yeah.
um, but
How did
yeah.
that lead into tattooing? Because I know that's kind of like where you picked up tattooing, right? It was in
uh,
Japan.
Well, it was where I kind of fell. Like I had when I was in art school, I had two friends. I had several friends actually that had gotten into tattooing. And one is a friend who I'm still pretty close with. I still talk to him on a regular basis. He did my back piece, and we like like we've just kind of been in and out of each other's life ever since then. And he was like he actually offered to teach me during art school, like while I was, I guess, like before I graduated art school, because he picked up enough.
So you were doing this all along while learning graphic design and teaching. You were studying tattooing as well.
No. It was just he was offering it to me, and I was like, well, no, I'm kind of stubborn. I'm gonna finish what I started.
Yeah.
And and he was like, but you're not gonna do graphic design, you know. He was just, you know, like he had not known me very long, but he had known me long enough to pick up and be and like really understand that I was really not going to do that.
Yeah.
That was how I got my dad to help me pay for art school, and I still owed $20,000 when I got out. So, you know, that tells you all you need to know about art school.
Yeah.
But when I got to Japan, I stumbled into a tattoo shop in Osaka.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very, very good to me. They were just good folks there. They were awesome about answering questions. I would bring in my sketchbook. They would, they would tell me about Japanese ukiyo-e artists that influenced tattooing. And when and like I had been like I had wanted a Japanese tattoo since I was in like 7th grade.
Yeah.
When I was in 7th grade, we went to New York for Thanksgiving, and my mom and I found this Zen bookstore, and I ended up I bought 2 things: a book on samurai and a really amazing scroll calendar with these hand painted dragons and stuff on them, of which I still have today. Like after the year was over, I cut the calendar part off and kept the dragons and carried them around with me for 20 years. Before I finally got them framed when I first got my first house. And
yeah, that's awesome. I have to see them. You have to show me a picture of them.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm gonna get one of these dragons tattooed on me one of these days. And and so like when I was in Japan, I was like, I'm gonna get me one of these dragons tattooed. So I actually ended up not getting a dragon in Japan. I ended up getting karashishi, and that was the lion. I can't get it in on the picture, but it's the Japanese lion. A lot of people call them foo dogs, and I hate that. But it's the karashishi is what you would call it in Japanese. And I need to get the one on the other arm, so because you have one with the mouth open and one with the mouth closed. And if you get it traditional, but nothing I have is traditional. But anyway, in Japan, I just I got tattooed a lot, and I really fell in love with it, and that was what I wanted to do. And
so you made a big career, kind of like a mental career shift into.
I did, and my journey through tattooing was very bumpy and unconventional, I guess you would say. I did do an apprenticeship, or most of an apprenticeship. I got divorced like through part of it, which it may have contributed to the divorce. But I was while I was in Japan, they offered me my job back full time at the Jewish school, and so I came back. I was running their computer lab and teaching there during the day. 2 nights a week, I was working in a tattoo shop, and it was an interesting time. I had just done my first actual tattoo when my first wife and I split up, and I had a friend from high school that I used to paint with, she was from California, and she was living in San Diego and tattooing out there, and she was like, well, like she knew my situation. She was like, we'll come out here and we'll finish teaching what you need to know. And I did get most of the foundation of what I needed to know. I was already doing tattoos at that point, and then another little wave hit, and I ended up having to go back to my hometown which was Dalton, Georgia, and I worked in a tattoo shop there, which was a very different environment than San Diego.
Yeah.
And it was also a really good kind of awakening as well. Up until that point, I had also been teaching.
Mm-hmm.
The tattoo industry was very different back then, which doesn't seem like it's even been that long ago.
What would
But
you say like would be like an obstacle? Like what was some of like the biggest challenges changing those career like perspective for you and being in different environments and trying to, make that happen? What was like the biggest challenge for you?
Well, I had a place, like the shop I ended up apprenticing in for a little while was actually owned by someone I went to art school with, and they were fascinated by the fact that I had lived in Japan and gotten tattoos there, and I had learned a few things,
You
like
learned a traditional way of tattooing too.
no, I mean, like I've gotten traditional
Oh,
tattoos.
you've gotten traditional. Yeah. I thought
Yeah,
you had learned that as
I've
well.
got Tabori style tattoos that are on my well, actually this one is a Bonji. Well, I can't see the camera there. It's a Bonji character, and not kanji but Bonji. It's a different character system, and it was done by with
Yeah.
the
We'll have
shaft.
to
And
show a picture of that because it's very intense.
yeah, and it was actually the least painful, fastest healing tattoo I've ever gotten.
Wow.
And then a few months later, I went back and got one of my lower back blending into the other back piece I have, and it was done traditionally as well. But I was doing martial arts at the time, and
Mhm.
I made the mistake of going to taijutsu the night before and getting nice and bruised before I laid down for that, and
Oh, not good.
it was not as pleasant of an experience.
I wouldn't suggest that.
Yeah, but I uh, yeah, like it was not as difficult, I guess, getting an apprenticeship. It was difficult because of the place I was at in my life, being
Mhm.
able to navigate it, because it was a different beast for me than it would be if I had been doing it. Like at that time, like there weren't a lot of fine artists in tattooing.
Yeah.
It's very different now. It's actually a really beautiful environment today. There's a lot of fine artists out there. It's a very you see a lot more artists supporting each other. It's a lot, it's a lot different than it was then.
Well,
Um,
there's a lot more
and
connectivity too. It's a lot
yeah,
more accessible for people.
yeah, and at that time there, like it was, um, like it was something that you did if like if you had a little bit of artist skill and you didn't really want to do the art school route or couldn't afford it or whatever, and you had the right connections, you could you could get into tattooing. And it was like it was a lot. Like if you're 18, you're going to handle it a lot different than if you're like I think I was like 26 or 27 at that time, and had already had a other career. And so
Yeah.
like like looking at different parts of that you're going through, like we basically, what happened was we ended up taking in another artist who had come from a very biker background, and he had a very different mentality about that, and so like we clashed a lot. I was actually kind of glad when I left, but uh, because the how I finished things was more guided than apprenticed. Like it was
Yeah.
more like the person that I was, like the friend of mine that was helping me through it when I went to California was uh, like she knew my background. She knew, okay, he knows how to do this. He knows how to
Yeah.
do this.
Mhm.
Okay, this is, like there's nothing mystical about this. Just go this. Like it's just a skill you need to learn. Repeat this. Do this. I
Yeah.
mean, like, and she would explain why you were doing stuff, and it wasn't like a lot of BS. you got to pay your dues kind of deal, you
Yeah.
know. The there's still I'm not as like I'm not as into it as I used to be. Like I do still have a lot of friends that
But
are,
you've
you know,
made
like
a career shift again. Like you even went into,
yeah. Well, basically what happened
becoming a
was
doctorate into education.
when I was in Dalton, it was kind of a cathartic experience being in, like, because I was basically seeing both ends of the spectrum. I was seeing a high volume shop in San Diego, and then going to a high volume flash shop in a small town.
Yeah.
And
It's different cultures all around.
it is. It's very different cultures. There was a lot more military. Like we were near military bases in San Diego, and that was also um, at the time that was where um, it was after 9/11, and we were shipping like we were sending
Yeah.
troops over to what would become our invasion of Iraq. And so like there was a carrier like I remember the all the Marines and the Navy guys coming in the weekend before the carrier went out, and you know, like you have to. It still kind of haunts me to this day. You know, like how many of those guys got stuff that we, you know, like that my shop did. You know, or the shop I was working at did, um, and you know, didn't come home. You know,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
uh, but anyway, when I was in Dalton, I was like. I loved it. I mean, like, I loved doing it. And uh, I didn't, um, I, I just kind of had a lot of shifts in life that were all at once that
Yeah. It
most
pushed you
people
in a
don't.
new direction, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's kind of complicated, but
Yeah.
yeah, um, all of a sudden, what was important to me at one point wasn't important. What, you know, wasn't the direction that I saw myself going in
Yeah.
anymore. Um, and I loved teaching too. You know, I mean, like I've always kind of bounced back and forth between art and teaching.
Yeah.
And where I'm at right now is great because I do both, so I don't have
Yeah.
to bounce anymore. But I moved back to Memphis. Like basically, my birth father had passed away,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up with a house. And I I didn't really want to stay in. I I had traveled enough at that point, and I had lived in Memphis long enough in that point where Memphis was really more my home than Georgia was, and
Mm-hmm.
so you know, like it's always weird trying to go back to your hometown after you've gone to college or, you know, like
Yeah.
gone
You've
away
moved
for a
away.
while.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and it wasn't just me moving away; it was like my mom had moved away, and you know, like by
My
that
entire
point they had,
family moved away from our small town.
yeah. Yeah, you were saying because you said they're in Knoxville now.
Everybody, yeah. Knoxville, West Coast, East Coast, South, everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. I ended up coming back to Memphis, and I had stayed in touch with Dr. Hall, who I refer to him as my virtual dad most
Mm-hmm.
of the time. And but he's been he was a good mentor for a long time. Charles Hall.
Mm-hmm.
There's not very many people in the ESL world who probably don't know who he is. But I got my master's in ESL,
Mm-hmm.
and that was where I really got to know Dr. Dahl, Teresa Dahl, and at University of Memphis, and she just retired. Um, and she sent me to Japan for 2 more years. Actually, it was only supposed to be 1 year, but I ended up staying two. And I taught at a university there. And I was actually doing more writing at that time than I was artwork, but I was slowly kind of moving back to visual art.
Yeah, for those
Or
who don't know, you're also a phenomenal writer.
um,
You have been throughout all the years, all the stories that you've written, and I've loved reading them.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, yeah. Have you written anything new recently?
No, the last stuff I was doing, I actually was doing a blog. Like I still am connected with Jake Meeks. He runs a podcast called Fireside Tattoo. The Fireside Tattoo podcast thing. And I was running. We were introduced through a mutual friend, and I started writing his blog for him. And and they do a podcast where, well, actually they do instructional videos that are kind of like continuing education for tattooers, people who are already in the tattoo industry. Like, it's not like some kind of virtual apprenticeship kind of school or anything. It's meant for people who need to kind of polish, like have areas that they want to polish up or whatever. And but he brings in a lot of fine artists, so you kind of get a little bit of a broader perspective. Like and he is a very painterly tattooer. I like his stuff. And once I started teaching full time at where I'm at right now, I haven't really done much writing for him. I'd like to. I haven't. I just hadn't been able to get back in.
You're gonna have to create, with all of your artwork, you're gonna have to create like an actual book. And that should be
I'm in an actual book right now.
I'm talking about your own book. A collection, of all your work and writings. And
I'm not sure what that was.
A lot of your art has a lot of meaning behind it, right? A lot of his cultural and historical and.
Yes, there's. It's kind of like when I decided to do the PhD, and after I did the master's in ESL, I came back from Japan, and when I got married, I just ended up doing the PhD in applied linguistics, and that was kind of the blending of my undergraduate and my master's degree, because my dissertation was about creating ESL curriculum for art schools. And it was a little more technical than that, but most people glaze over after I say the first two lines of the title, because it was what you would call corpus linguistics or corpus analysis. But everything kind of comes together or blends together, and so there are influences from mostly from Japan, not necessarily tattooing. In fact, I've been painting really hardcore for about 3 years now, and most of what I've done with painting is try to divest myself from the habits I created or that I developed as a tattooer, because I really wasn't in it all that long. If you look at it from what the tattoo industry, I was really in it really 2 years, straight hardcore, and then just kind of in and out for a couple years. And then I got my master's, and it was supposed to be a break. And I ended up just never going back.
Yeah.
And that was 2005. So, it wasn't ever there was no Instagram back then. There was I was nobody. I consider myself a fairly mediocre tattooer. I can do a really good basic tattoo, and that's about it. I didn't stay in it long enough to really develop the skill to do a really well developed custom work. But especially, there's so much phenomenal stuff out there right now. It's just amazing. But meaning wise, and influence wise, I actually wanted to divest from the really line oriented compositions that you do in tattooing, because you have to, everything's line based.
Yeah.
And so I do a lot more expressionist mark making with my painting. I I've always been a huge Willem de Kooning fan since like ninth grade, I guess. And I was really, really fortunate. He died my last year of art school. And we just so happened to be I had uh, worked and saved and bummed and gotten enough money to go on a school trip to New York, and I got to see the last show at the Modern of his work.
Wow.
And it was so different from everything you see in the books, like everything else that you see of his work. It was
impactful,
I was in tears when I left. I mean,
Wow.
It was just so, because especially when you read about the last years of his life, because he had Alzheimer's, and it was like he almost couldn't hold a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then his wife Elaine would be like, like if they had people over, they would be like, "Why don't you show them the paintings that you're working on right now?" Mm-hmm. And like every account I had read was like, the moment he stepped over that threshold, it was like he was rejuvenated. Like it was like a totally different person. And he would talk about his art. He would, and
that's what art does.
The artwork. Yeah. That it's my grasp at sanity right now, because I have a 9-year-old. I have a feral 9-year-old that takes up most of my sanity and time now. But there was so much, a lot of oranges. It was just so bright, like so vivid and so uplifting, for someone at the end of their life, like it was just like, I mean, it really was very impactful. I've always had it's so weird, because like I've always had a draw as far as like personal preference to abstract expressionist. But it's not what I pursue as like what I'm trying to do with my art. In fact, the biggest thing that I run into with my paintings is they don't fit in any category. And I'm dancing around the meaning question that you were asking about. I've done several series with alchemy. I'm a linguist, and I'm an extremely nerdy person. And so and that's usually the joke I make, is I make nerd art.
That's awesome.
It's
that should be your new hashtag on social media.
Nerd art.
Yeah. Yep.
Like there's usually spirals based to create the background. There's a little bit of Yayoi Kusama influence there, because I don't paint, like it's not abstractionist, but it's not, like there is some representation, but it's not technically representational. But there's language embedded in it as well. There's an area of linguistics called semiotics, which deals with symbols and kind of visual meaning. So like stop signs. There's a semiotic visual meaning to it, even though you may not necessarily read the word stop on it. Even if it didn't have the word stop, this red octagonal sign has meaning, and you read that meaning. And I incorporate a lot of that in there. I like reading about alchemy and mysticism a lot.
What's your favorite book right now?
My favorite book right now, I'm reading a book that as you know, Memphis College of Art just closed permanently.
I know.
And
I wish I could have gotten down there for, they were having a sale.
They were, and I went to every book sale they had and filled up 2 boxes of books.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean, at the end of it, like I bought a bunch of books for my office at work, like because they were getting rid of the nice practice annuals for like $2 a piece, and I was just but I came across this great book that I'm reading right now, and it's A Colorful Apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
And I had one of my aunts, my aunt and uncle, they're big into Howard Finster, and I grew up in Georgia, so in Northwest Georgia. On top of that, so I had a buddy in junior high who would go down to Rome every weekend, like Rome, in between Rome and Athens, and to see this band that was, kind of, it was REM, like before they were actually recording. And Howard Finster did one of the REM covers, and but he was a self-taught artist. He was what you would refer to as an outsider artist. And so the book that I'm reading right now is an essay on outsider art. It's heavily, like, there are kind of two factions of outsider artists. Basically, an outsider artist is someone who is not formally trained. They're mostly self-taught. Folk artists kind of fall under that.
Which is a huge new generation that's coming up. It's a lot of self-taught artists. It's not.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Especially with the graffiti artists that are coming up now. I mean, and I don't even know that you call it graffiti art anymore.
But even designers too. There's a lot of self-taught
designers. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And but there's like kind of two factions of outsider art. One are like crazy people.
Which is in every industry, medium, shape, and color across.
Yeah, yeah. There were a lot of outsider artists that would produce artwork in insane asylums and stuff like that, or they were just really weird people that after they died, you would go in their apartment and find like everything. Like they had been like taping coloring books together for like years and creating like these like narratives of like little girls fighting aliens or something, and then
they become super.
That's actually a guy. I can't remember that artist's name, but there's actually a guy that did that. But then there's the other spectrum, and that's religious, almost a zealousness, a religious element of the outsider artist. And that's what this book's focused on. There are a lot of outsider artists who basically, they have usually an evangelical background, and they start having visions, or what most people would refer to as kind of like a mental condition, but theirs are very specific, and it's almost compulsory. And that's what happened to Howard Finster. He had visions. He was a reverend, but one day he just started painting. And in fact, the chapter that I'm on right now, the guy that's writing this, like, he it's just essays that he contacted all these different Christian outsider artists, and right now he's riding around Northwest Georgia with Howard Finster's daughter, looking for a sprayer to touch up paint on part of the property, because he has like Howard Finster left behind like this huge farm of artwork. I mean, it's and he created it so that it was like this sensory overload visual experience that you walk into. And
you're gonna have to send this to me. Very interesting.
Yeah.
We'll share that with everybody in a link for sure.
Yeah. I just bought it at a used book sale. It's
very intriguing.
Yeah. I read a lot of Neil deGrasse Tyson, and in fact, I downloaded the masterclass thing that you see online. I downloaded it for two reasons. One was because Stephen Curry was teaching a basketball thing, and my son really wanted to do it, and so like we've been going through that class, and it's actually helped both of us with our basketball, even though I don't really play basketball.
I play basketball and I don't remember that much. So
I was surprised how much I remembered when I had to actually show my son how to do stuff.
Wow.
Because I had not played since like I had not played since like elementary school or junior high or whenever the last time I played. But like the other one was the Neil deGrasse Tyson one. it's like nerdy. Yeah, like
I'll have to check his out.
there's a lot of.
I have masterclass, so I'll have to bookmark him.
Okay.
I know
Yeah, yeah,
him.
Neil,
I haven't watched any of his stuff on masterclass. So.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
The mixology one is really good too.
yeah.
I can make a really good mojito now.
Hey, you need to make a ginger mojito. That's my new favorite drink. That's like the best. I had it in the Bahamas last year, and it's probably my go-to if anybody makes it in a restaurant.
Okay, all right.
It's really good. Well,
Yeah.
what is one of the biggest things that, I know throughout your career you've had such like a big evolution, and you've overcome so many different facets of like changing your career. Like, what is one thing that you want to like leave with people? Like, what is the biggest advice that you've learned throughout your career?
Advice.
Or what's the best
Sure,
advice you've ever?
for me.
Yes.
Um, well, I was talking about Schechter, the Jewish school that I taught at. That was the only school or the only job I've ever gotten like out of a newspaper, like that I've ever just applied to. Aside from like summer jobs and stuff.
Yeah.
Every other job I've ever gotten was through someone else that I knew. I guess it was a word that was thrown around a lot when I was in art school, but I never understood it until much later, and that was networking.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so important.
It is, but I would take it a step further. Don't just go out and meet people and like hand them your business card and expect them to call you back.
Yeah.
Be part of a community. There are two kind of artists. There are those whose egos can't fit through the door, and it's kind of goes hand in hand with being an artist. It's you either overcome that or you don't, and you want to stay away from those. And I think every artist wrestles with that. When you get any kind of modicum of like, oh, well, I'm selling art now, or whatever, like whatever you consider success. Avoid that. But be part of a community and be an artist that uplifts other artists. So it's not just networking; it's be someone who is supportive of people that you respect and love. I mean, I've joined like 3 artist groups here in Memphis over the past year, mainly for the purpose of being able to show my work it's so nice to just. These are just people who enjoy being around each other and doing stuff with each other and yeah. Find that community and the networking will take care of itself. Just be someone who gives as well. Don't just take as an artist. Don't just think that the world that you're the only artist in the world that that's doing anything worthwhile. I don't really consider anything I'm doing worthwhile. It's just something I kind of have to do. It is very compulsory for me right now. So I don't know if that makes me kind of an outsider artist in a lot of ways, but it's be someone who is supportive of others, and it's those people that are gonna that I think you'll find that are gonna support you and in ways that you don't know you need to be supported when nobody else is around. When there's no clients around or there's nobody else.
And that's the reason why I started this, and it's creating a community of artists, or no matter what your industry, like finding that artist within yourself and being able to connect with others and understand, each journey is different. And there's a lot of ups and there's a lot of downs, and you need to be able to share that and support each other and know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
And do what?
Yeah, and I mean, like, it is a weird time to be an artist because there's so many self outlets now that you can just plug into that weren't available, and I'm still trying to navigate that. Like, I don't, part of me.
We all are.
Yeah. I mean, like I went through art school at a time when, you know, all you had were galleries,
Mhm.
and I still want that validation of being in a gallery. And I'm actually the featured artist in a gallery this month. But, I would like to find one permanent to work with, you know,
Yeah.
still.
Well, they have to find you one of them here in Nashville.
But
You have
like,
to bring all your art here
I,
too.
yeah, I've actually contacted a few, but I haven't had much success.
Well, let me know. I
The
might
stuff
know somebody. Connection.
okay, there you go. Yeah, yeah. I
Well,
mean, the stuff I do so different. You know, like I said, it's not really in a category,
mhm.
and they don't like it when you're not in a category. So,
I love it though. You have to send me your 3 favorite pieces and I'll have to show it to everybody at the end of this video. So definitely send me your 3 favorite and like a little bit of description of like what they are for sure.
okay, I've got like 3 main series that I've done recently. And one was a dragon series of Japanese style dragons, but done um,
You
either
have to
expression.
send one of your dragonflies too. Those are always my favorite.
Yep, the dragonfly. Everybody likes the damn dragonflies. So,
We do, because that's your signature.
yeah, it kind of is. Yeah, and if you like, I think I have a blog entry that talks about how that really became an important. There were 2 important uh, animalistic images from the Japanese culture that I kind of latched onto while I was there, and that was the dragonflies, which are basically a symbol of renewal in life. They're a symbol of spring, and you know, and then and they became kind of a symbol of good. Um, and then when I was living in Japan the first time, the mukade. Mukade are these really big, nasty centipedes that live near bamboo areas, and they're really big, um,
Ooh,
like
ooh.
really big.
I'm gonna have to go
And they
Google
became a symbol of evil. You know, like,
that.
um, I had one living in my apartment with me for a little while. Actually, I had a family of them living in my apartment with me, and you know, like I lifted up my pillow one night, and there's one just kind of curled up, waiting on me. You know, like, hey, where you lay for bed, man? You know, like,
Oh man, I'm gonna
so
have
they
to
became
Google
a symbol of evil.
that. Gosh. Well, I feel like you and I could talk for another hour or two, and I'm gonna have to have you on
Yeah,
another
I
episode
know.
for sure.
Yeah,
But I really appreciate you just coming on and sharing your journey and your story, and just telling your process of like how you've had to navigate throughout the years, and never giving up and changing paths when you needed to.
yeah. I'm pretty adaptable, so like,
I think you have
um,
to be, like especially like this day and age, if things shift so quickly,
they
like
do.
if you're not adaptable, it's
Yeah.
gonna leave you behind.
And I make jokes about the PhD being a poor life choice, mainly because like I don't use it right now. Like I'm actually full circle back. You know, like teaching what my undergrad is in, and I you know, but I really wouldn't trade that experience or the people that you know, like everything I went through in the PhD program. I wouldn't trade. You know, just it was a really great experience, and a really growing experience as a teacher as well. And,
I love that. Well, thank you again so much, and let everybody know where they can follow you. Where are some of your social links, your website, where they can subscribe and like.
yeah, so the Instagram is just faster creature, one word. Long story behind that. I've had it for years, actually. And then the website, like the website, which I really don't update very often, is it's fastercreature.com. Um, and um,
Awesome.
those are the 2 main ones. My Facebook is more like just family and friends that want to see pictures of my kid and random sarcastic remarks.
I love it.
I married somebody who's totally immune to my sarcasm, so uh, yeah, Facebook is my sarcasm outlet.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, thank you again so much. If you're enjoying this series, make sure that you're following the Design Therapy at the Design Therapy on Instagram, Facebook. I also have a website at thedesigntherapy.co. Make sure that you heart and like and subscribe and let us know what you think. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Bye.